Welcome to SCO Houston's SBA series, exploring the programs, resources, and opportunities available to small businesses through the U.S. Small Business Administration, from federal contracting and funding opportunities to SBIR, SBTT, SBA awards, and more. Each episode turns SBA resources into practical insights for small business owners. Listeners, if you find value in this episode, please take a moment to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcast or Spotify. It is completely free and takes just one tap. Your subscription helps us bring you new episodes every week and practical insight for small business community. Welcome to SCO Houston Podcast. I am PV Bala, a SCO mentor and your host. Today we are discussing an important topic because many small business owners have questions about how to get started with federal contracting and how to take advantage of the opportunities available to them. To help us understand this better, we had two experienced SBA professionals from the Houston District Office. Our first guest is Benson, who has been with the US SBA for more than 20 years. She currently serves as a business opportunity specialist in the SBA's Houston District Office. Ida works closely with small businesses, helping them understand federal contracting and certification programs and connecting them with opportunities to do business with government agencies. Mrs. Gomes, our second guest, a business opportunity specialist with the SBA's Houston District Office. Isis brings more than 25 years of business experience in the Houston and Fort Bend area, including banking, consulting, and small business development. He has been with SBA since 2019, helping small businesses with business development, financial analysis, and access to government contracting opportunities. Welcome, Ida and Isis. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, PV. Thank you for inviting us today.
Yes, thank you very much for all that. Thank you for having us here today, and hopefully we can share a lot of good information.
Yeah, we have a lot to cover, so I have broken up into several segments. The first is about opportunity itself, whether a small business is ready to take advantage of it. The federal government awarded $79 billion in prime contracts to small businesses in FY 2025. Nearly 28% of all federal contracting dollars, exceeding the 23% goal, were for small businesses. That's a huge opportunity. What kind of small business are we talking about? What type of products and services does the government typically buy from small businesses?
Okay. Well, the federal agencies, we really buy everything. It really just depends on what you're selling and what agency you would sell to. So we buy all products and services, everything from janitorial, construction, IT services, project management, office supplies. We literally buy everything. It's just about what agency buys what product or services and when they buy it.
It covers all products and services. I mean, typical one that you're narrating are all ones small businesses are in, right? So
Absolutely.
exactly their kind of range of products and services.
It's a wide variety of products and services. Absolutely.
Now, what's your business readiness checklist for small business before they can even think about federal contracting? Is cash flow one of those critical factors given government payment cycles?
Oh, cash flow is absolutely going to be important. But more important than just cash flow, market research is really important. You have to figure out because literally you're going to be selling to the entire federal government, the U.S. territories, as well as the continental U.S. So you want to make sure that you are marketing to the correct agency that's going to buy your product or service. Because as a small business owner, you know that your time is extremely valuable. So you want to make sure that you do some market research to make sure what agency buys your product or service, when they're going to buy it, so you can make sure that you're marketing to the correct agency. And then, of course, you got to make sure that you have enough cash flow capacity to compete and win federal opportunities. So those are some of the things that you want to think about before you start that journey into federal contracting and what that will look like for your company. You also need to make sure that you complete your SAM registration. So SAM is a registration that all companies that want to sell to the federal government must complete. It is also how you get paid. Your banking information is included in that registration. So you want to be really careful with your login information. So those are some of the things that you want to complete before you start getting into federal contracting.
Of course, we'll come to SAM in greater detail subsequently. But tell me, from your experience of being with small businesses, advising them on federal contracting, what are the most common reasons small businesses attempt this to get federal contracting but fail, not from competition, but internal unpreparedness? You experience that, Ada?
It does happen. There are many pitfalls when it comes to a small business transitioning into federal contracting. And a lot of those things depend on what industry they're in. The pitfalls for IT is going to be completely different from construction or janitorial services. So it really just depends on what industry you're in, what type of difficulties that you will experience when you start getting into federal contracting. But there is some things that you can do to lessen those pitfalls and issues that you may have. And one of those is going out and getting some of the free training that the SBA offers, and also visiting we have a department called Apex Accelerators. And Apex Accelerators is a counseling group that focuses exclusively on government contracting, and that's at any level, whether it's city, state, or federal. So they can help answer those questions for you. How do you market? How do you sell? How do you price? How do you complete proposals? They can help you through all those different aspects of selling to the government agencies. And so that is a way that, even though there are a lot of pitfalls and a lot of difficulties, that is a way that small businesses can help themselves lessen those pitfalls and difficulties.
Can I also add just to that as well? You have to look at the capability of it. Do they have the capability to perform on a government contract? You have to have that cash flow. And then, of course, we'll talk a little bit more about the capability of it. Do you have the past performance, to do this type of work? Because, government contracting is very demanding as well, and it can be very rewarding at the same time. So, you have to be able to prepare. And like Ida's also mentioning about market research, doing a lot of your information related to market research.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, I'm trying to get into separately on the preparedness. I mean, you're talking about capability rather, as well as the apex, because these are very important areas that we need to address. But prior to that, people don't realize that there is something called set-aside contracts. Federal law requires that at least 23% of all federal contracting dollars go to small businesses. In plain terms, or what that actually means for small business owner, can you explain what the contract is, how it works, and how is it different from a regular open market contract?
So a set aside means that, so the overall goal is 23%. So that is for the small business community. So you could see some that's total small business set aside. So that means that instead of you competing against everyone that sells that same product or service, you would only compete against other small businesses that sell that product or service. So you will only be competing against basically other businesses that are similarly situated to your company. So that allows you to be more competitive for that opportunity. Whereas if you're competing against a company that's other than large or a large company, it can be really difficult for small businesses to be really competitive with pricing, with their services. And so when you're only competing against other small businesses, that allows you a greater opportunity to be able to compete and win a federal opportunity. So that's the way the federal government has decided to assist small businesses with that, because what good is a set-aside goal if you have difficulty competing in the open market? And so the open market is everyone. So every company that sells a product or service is the open market. But the set asides are set aside for the small business community specifically. And so in addition to small business, we have other social economic categories that I think we're going to get into a little
Yeah,
later
we'll get into it.
also. But yeah, that's how they determine, that's how they set those opportunities aside so the small business community can bid and win on those contracts.
So tell me, when you look at that, small business to bidding for the contract for the first time, what do you be able to get? What was the price at which the past contracts were given? Let's say the previous year, the previous last 2 years, for example, to get an idea what is the price range at which he needs to bid, because the price is going to be the major factor, isn't it? Because most of the terms and conditions of a federal contract are all fixed. I don't think you can change any of them. You just have to bid. You have to agree on those terms and conditions and bid your price, which is the lowest, right? Or is there any other factor that works that for which you need to bid also, other than the pricing?
Well, yes. So
Okay.
although pricing is very important with federal contracting, it's not the only thing they're going to be looking at. And that, again, goes back to what product or service you want to sell.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the product or service will depend on whether or not price is ultimately the number one factor or it's not. We have something in federal contracting called lowest price technically acceptable, where they're looking at the technical part of it as well as the price. But the price is not the ultimate goal because we need the technical part to be correct. Example of that is construction. Although, yes, there will be a base price, but they're also looking at, how you plan to put that project together, what materials you plan to use. Those things are all important when it comes to building a building. So it's not just price that's the most important. So they'll be looking at other aspects. That's why they look at your past performance. That's why they look at the whole proposal in totality, not just certain parts of it. If you're just selling office supplies, then yes, lowest price would be the main goal. But when you're selling other things that may be custom, IT services or construction, they're looking at a lot of other aspects besides just the pricing.
See, the delivery period is also kind of fixed, or this is a variable. That means you are able to deliver a little earlier, for example. Is it an advantage for you? Or they state that you need, this is required in 2 months or 3 months, that's it.
It will change. So you're going to put, so it again depends on what the product or service is, but let's just go with services. So the government has an estimate of what they think they should spend on a contract. But just because they have an estimate doesn't always mean that's 100% correct or that whatever they are seeking can be completed for that amount. And so it is up to you as the small business owner or the owner of a business in general to bid what you can actually complete a project for. Because you don't want to put yourself in a position where you submit a bid because maybe the government has an idea for it, but it's really not possible for you to complete that project for that amount. So you want to make sure that you are submitting a proposal based on your estimates, what you complete the project for. And again, we're not asking you to work for free. So you want to make sure that you have some type of profit margin in there as well.
Of course, yeah. But tell me, would it make any difference if the government agency which is offering the contract, whether it is in Houston or Texas or any other part of USA, is there an advantage to the local entrepreneur who is bidding for the same contract along with the others?
Yes, on some of those you can, because let me give you kind of an example here. So let's say the government is ordering, let's say a box, 12 by 12 box, and you have a local company that's doing that, and that's under 350,000 threshold. So they're looking to see if the companies here locally can perform that. And if they can, then it falls under the mandate that they're looking for, that 23%. That also can qualify under that. But here's the thing. Can you find a manufacturer here locally that can do such a thing? And that's a small business. So, it depends on a lot of the products and a lot of the services that are being asked by the federal government. and how much information they'll be able to provide.
Okay. Now there are so many categories of set aside, for small businesses, women-owned businesses, disabled, veteran-owned, HUBZone, small disadvantaged business category. And can you walk us through these categories and what percentages each category, the amount is allocated?
Okay. So for some of that, remember the total small business is a 23%. That's the overall picture. So for women owned, there's a subcat 5%. And for service disabled veteran, that's also 5%. And for HUBZone, and we'll talk about all these certifications in a little bit, but the HUBZone is a 3%. And then the last one is the small disadvantaged small business, which is at 5%. And every one of these numbers, the federal agencies try to meet and target to try to catch that target goal. And currently a lot of the federal agencies have met that goal. So we're hoping every year that they increase that number a little bit more so that way we can always meet that number to help a lot of these small businesses.
I also, talking to someone I know, you were saying sometimes there's a challenge to meet these set aside contract per categories wise.
Correct.
So is SBA monitoring it? And is it very strict about it?
Well, SBA is not monitoring any of that because, there's so many contracts out there that are out to the public. So we have no possibility on contracting to see how many agencies here are locally to do that. But we do have a certain dollar amount that we track what's coming in and out of the Houston area as far as contract dollar amount wise. And, I don't have that number specifically right now, but, there is a number out there that for the Houston businesses that are out there, how much of them get a certain dollar amount for contracts.
Okay. So let's come to the other important aspect, the SAM.gov. Explain to us in plain English, why is registration non-negotiable before anything else in SAM? And walk us through the registration process. What does a business owner need to gather? How long does it take? And what is the UEI number, that replaces the DUNS number? So, people know about SAM, but not many know how to navigate that. If you can explain that, please.
Well, SAM is basic registration for your company. And again, it's required for everyone. And you don't necessarily need to collect a lot of information because it's basic information about your company that you would already know as a small business owner. But what's really important about SAM is also how you get paid. So your banking information is there. Because if you were to bid and win on a federal contract, they would pay you electronically, of course. And this system is how that's done. So in the last few years, the government has tried to decrease the number of websites you have to go to accomplish one thing. And so SAM is the result of that. So previously, you would have to go to about 3 different websites to complete registration to sell to the federal government. But SAM decreased that, so they're all combined into one. Like previously, we used to use DUNS numbers, and you would have to go register with Duns and Bradstreet to get a DUNS number to complete your registration. But now they created, when they redid SAM, they created UEI numbers, and that's unique entity identifier. And that UEI number is exclusive to your company, and it's basically kind of like your social security number for your company. And it's assigned to only you, and that's how they track your company, or we want to look up your company. That's how you use as your identifier if you want somebody to look up your SAM registration. And so it takes roughly about 10 to 14 days for everything to get approved and active. And again, that depends on whether or not everything is correct that you enter. So you want to make sure that whatever you entered into, like the IRS for your EIN, the state of Texas for your LLC, your bank records, whatever information you entered there needs to match what is in SAM. Because these systems, talk to each other to make sure that information is correct and valid. So you want to make sure all the information is correct. And normally, if everything is correct, it matches perfectly, then it takes about 10 to 14 days for your account to become active. And your account needs to be active before you should start bidding on contracts. Because if you don't have an active SAM registration, you can bid on contracts all day, but you'll never win one without an active SAM registration. So it's a requirement, not an option.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And every business needs NAICS codes to register on SAM and bid on contract. Can you explain this code? Why does it matter? How does the business find what is the right one for the products that they manufacture or sell?
Okay, well, so the NIS code is actually the North American Industry Classification System. So this is used by all federal contracts to describe what service is being provided, meaning like what industry are you in and so forth. So that's very helpful. And it also has a side standard to determine a business would be considered a small business, either in dollar size or in the number of employees. So you can always get some of that information, the side standards, by going to SBA's website to be able to review the table of side standards for that industry. And all of the NAICS codes are pretty much posted on there. And, you can just choose to see which one it is. And then from there, you can go ahead and move on to the next level. Because, the NAICS is very important information for you to know and have.
And I just want to add that you can also have more than one NAICS code because a lot of small businesses, do multiple different things. So you can have more than one NAICS code. You'll just have a primary code, and that's going to be what the bulk of your sales is. And then you can also have secondary codes as well.
Yeah, I think from what I know and what I would advise the small business owners is knowing this code is so important because all aspects of business that you're going to be doing, whether you want to know more about import and export and such kind of data, then this code is going to be of immense use to you.
Mm-hmm. Right, it is. And it's also when a contract is advertised, when it's an RFP advertised on SAM, that is also how it's going to be classified. There's going to be a NAICS code attached to it. And if you bid on it, you need to have that NAICS code on your SAM profile as well. So it's really important in federal contracting.
Yeah. And the SAM that you're explaining to me, it needs to be activated, needs to be renewed each 12 months period, right? It is not a permanent number registration that you're done with.
No, it's not. You have to review it, update it every 12 months. You can go in at any time period, but just know that it will expire in 12 months from the date of when it becomes active. So you just want to make sure that you log in at least once a year to review your information, resave your profile so it stays active at all times.
Now, how does a business actually use SAM to find the set aside opportunities relevant to their category? Is there a notification system by which they register and they get intimation on their email saying that, look, there's an opportunity for you?
Yes, you can set up a notification. So you will set it up based on what your NAICS codes are or even keywords. And so you can get a notification when something is advertised. Sam will send you an email and say, hey, you may be interested in this opportunity. So you can definitely set up notifications as well. So you don't have to constantly log in at all times to see what's available.
Now, let's see, coming to the certifications, which is extremely important, the HUBZone, WSB, and VetCert. For the first time listeners, how do they figure out which certification applies to them? Sometimes maybe more than one apply to them. And how do they use that certificate? Why does certification matter for accessing the set aside contract? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, here's some benefits of that certification. So, one of them is to be able to access two sole sources and competitive set-aside contracts. And then, of course, there's assistance for you through the federal procurement experts, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Of course, business development assistance for dedicated business opportunity specialists like ourselves. And then, the opportunities are there to create joint ventures and establish businesses. That's, another category there for the benefits.
Okay.
And the priority access to federal surplus property, which is also available to small business. It's just kind of like the similar information with the SAM.gov, which, a lot of that information is completely free. And, a lot of the registration process and requirements that are there are accessible to you to be able to do that. So if we go into talking a little bit more about, some of these certifications, of course, we have the 8A certification, the HUBZone, and the veteran-owned and women-owned. And, of course, we'll talk a little bit more in detail about those.
Does the certification guarantee anything, contract awards, or other than making use of the set-aside contracts for the certification? That is the primary objective of these certifications, right? And SBA is one place where you can get all the certification done. Am I right?
No. The certification does not guarantee a contract award. No one can guarantee a contract award, because at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you qualified and you can provide that product or service. So no one can guarantee a contract award. But what's important about certification is it allows you a space where you can really compete for opportunities with other similarly situated companies. And that's the great benefit of it, where you can actually come in and have a real opportunity to compete and win in the federal marketplace.
Now, earlier, Ida, you talked about this track record. Federal agencies ask for past performance references in every proposal. How do the first timer build their track record starting from zero? What do you advise?
Well, first of all, past performance does not have to be federal. It could be if you work for the city. It could be if you worked in the private sector. We're just looking to see whether or not you have actually performed on this type of work, and what was the outcome of that. Were you successful in your past performance? And so it doesn't have to be federal. A lot of people think, well, I've been running this company for 5 years, but I've never performed on a federal contract. But you have performed on dozens of contracts in that 5-year period. And so that would also qualify you as your past performance as well. If you don't have past performance, or maybe you've just started your company, then you may want to look at subcontracting.
That's true.
Subcontracting is a great way to get that experience without all of the liability that goes along with being a prime contractor. So, you just want to think about different ways to meet that. So past performance does not have to be federal. And if you don't have any performance and you're a brand new company, you may want to look at subcontracting as a way to build that past performance.
But how do you look for subcontracting opportunities?
So a couple different ways. So we have some websites, and I'll talk about that. But one of the best ways is to actually go to SAM and look at contracts that are too large for your company. But look who is bidding on those contracts, because SAM will give you a lot of that information. Who is watching the contract? Just like you're watching the contract, you can see other companies that are watching the contract. And so you can go in and see who's watching the contract, who made the top 5 for a possible award of that contract, and then market to those companies your product or services as a subcontractor so you can get that experience. The SBA also has a directory of prime contractors with subcontracting plans. On certain contracts, depending on the size, the government will require the prime to create a subcontracting plan. And so the SBA has a directory for those companies. And so you can see who has a subcontracting plan, market to them. GSA, which is General Services Administration, they do a lot of the federal government's properties.
Yeah.
They manage the properties, they manage vehicles, they provide a lot of contracts as well. They have a subcontracting directory for small businesses, as well as the Department of Defense has one as well. So they can use all those different resources to find different companies to market to and offer their subcontracting services to.
Excellent. You had mentioned your first question on Apex Accelerator. Most small business owners never heard of Apex Accelerator. What is it? Who funds it? And how does a small business use it?
So Apex Accelerators is a counseling organization that is partially funded by Department of War. So it's your tax dollars at work. And that organization is put together primarily to help small businesses figure out, how do I sell to the government? And that's at any level, not just federal. They can help you register, complete your registration like your SAM.gov registration. They can help you research and find opportunities, helping you set up those notifications in SAM.gov so when opportunities come out, You make sure you bid on them, and then they can help you respond, meaning that they can help you put together your proposals. Now, they won't do all of this work for you, but what they will do is assist you with it and help you through the process, because you really should know, you need to learn how to do these things on your own, as well as having someone to help you along through the process. So they won't do everything for you, but what they will do is assist you. And they only work with companies that are actually existing and operating. So you can't go in to Apex Accelerators and say, hey, I want to start a company. That's something you should do with some of our other resource partners like the Small Business Development Center. But when you have your company, you establish your company, you're up and running, and now you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I sell to the government? What does that look like? That is when you go to Apex Accelerators to help you with it.
I mean, one can just walk in, or you need to, there is a procedure for taking an appointment with Apex?
It's absolutely procedure. So what you would do is go to their website, and again, because they are partially funded by the Department of War, every state has an Apex Accelerator. So I know this podcast may reach outside of the Houston area. So if you're in a different state, you would just look for the Apex Accelerators located in your state. You would complete a short application online about your company. And then in the Houston area, now I can't say what happens outside of the Houston area, but for the Houston area, because they are so busy, what they do is a introduction class, and it's a prerequisite to getting your counselor assigned to you. So you have to go to this class. That's a couple hours. It's a prerequisite to your being assigned a counselor. Once you complete that class, they will assign a counselor to you, and then you will work with that person in any aspects that you need. Whatever you need to help you get started in federal contracting, that's what they'll help you with. So if you need assistance putting together a marketing plan or marketing documentation, they can do that. If you need help putting together a proposal, they can need you to help you do that. If you want to get certified with the federal government through the SBA, then they can help you with that. So whatever you need assistance with, that's what they'll help you with.
Is there a cost associated with businesses need to pay?
No, it's completely free of charge.
Lovely.
And again, for the Houston area, we have a lot of online training as well. So they have some pre-recorded training, and they also do live training as well. So you can see that information on their webpage as well, but it's completely free of charge.
Tell me, it also mentioned that Apex help businesses develop their capability statement, the one-page document that is needed. Now, what is the capability statement? You also mentioned earlier about it.
Yes. What capability statement is, it's more like your resume. It has information on your business, what it does, what type of product services it provides, that type of information. And it also provides your NAICS code, your primary code, and then also other primary NAICS codes that you do, not just specifically that prime one. There's other ones that you include that. And you also have to add some past performances. What are your experiences? One or two or three of them, just provide that information, just like you would as a resume. Who, what, when, and where is what the capability statement all includes. So that's all part of, what Apex can help you with. They're not going to write it for you because you're the one that knows your business. They're the ones that are going to explain and, say, hey, this is what we can include. Take this out. Why don't you add this, that type of information? Because, they're going to determine if your business is ready for federal government contracts. And then they can also help you, make sure you're registered in the proper places. So that way you can be involved in the government marketplace.
Yeah. Tell me, Ida and Jesus, we covered federal contracting, most aspects of it. If you think that there is an important element which we have missed out in this conversation, would you like to elaborate if something has been missed out?
I don't think we've actually missed anything because we covered a lot of the basics of it when it comes to federal contracting. And there's a lot of information that is really specific to government contracting that we have not covered, but that would take more than the time we have today. But I would just like to go back and kind of reiterate some of the things that we said that small businesses should make sure that they consider. Like, for the federal government, you have a ton of resources available to you free of charge as a small business owner. And small businesses should make sure that they take advantage of that. We have our local resource partners like Apex Accelerators and the Small Business Development Center. Of course, we have your organization SCORE that's vital to the small business community. But we also have training that the SBA has developed that's available on our website. It's completely virtual and it focuses on government contracting. It's called Empower to Grow. And that training is available free of charge to small businesses. It's completely electronic, so you don't have to leave your home, but it focuses on contracting and federal contracting. So it's a great resource for the small business community. I also want to say that conducting market research is really important when it comes to the federal government, again, because you're marketing to the entire U.S. as well as territories. And so you want to make sure that I would suggest that you always develop some type of plan when it comes to the federal marketplace, because you want to make sure that, you know, what works and what doesn't work. So you can focus on what works. And if something really is not working for you, then you can pivot and change to something that's working better to make the best use of your time as a small business owner.
Okay. Yeah. What I was just going to add is also, you know, you need to find out which federal agency is purchasing your product and services.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and then how much are they buying? Have they awarded anything that's set aside from that?
Correct.
You know, that's also very good information to know, and also find out who the competitors are, who are the ones that have been holding those contracts. You know, that's very important. And, you know, those contracts, when are they expiring? Because all these contracts are expire either in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, you know, 10 years. So that's very important information for you to know, because if you don't know that information, then that's where the frustration comes in and you're like, no, this is too much information or not enough information and so forth.
And let me add, so I know people are going to say, okay, that's great. How do I find that out? So there are a couple different places you can go for that information. So you can look at some of that information on SAM.gov to see who was awarded. And you can also look on USAspending.gov. That website will tell you, you know, when the contract was awarded, how much was paid out on that contract, when is it going to expire? So you can go to those websites and actually find that information. We're not just saying that and leaving you out in the open to, you know, figure it out. You can actually go to those websites and find that information. You can also go to acquisitions.gov to find out what federal governments are going to be looking for in the future. You know, look at their forecasting for 2027 and 2028. So that's another great website that you can use as a resource to do your market research when you're starting into federal contracting.
Now, as soon as a contract is awarded, you will not fight it anymore over there, right?
No, when a contract is awarded, you can still see information from that award on SAM.gov. You can see like the top 5 contractors that made the last list that they selected from. So you can still see that information. And then on USA Spending, you can see the information of how much have they spent, when is it expired, that type of information, whether or not it was in one of the set aside categories or was it full and open. You can also see that on SAM.gov as well.
So tell me, for listeners who are listening to this podcast today, what specific action plan you will suggest they need to take immediately if they are interested in federal contracting?
Hey, Sush, you want to take it?
Okay, well, you know, the first thing, like we talked about, is you got to get registered with SAM.gov. So registration is the number one key, and to make sure that it's been done properly and so forth, because you have to remember the SAM.gov is the official U.S. government website that managed by the General Service Administration. So they're the ones that, you know, business has to be registered to search for any contract opportunities, and the website that manages all the federal awards. So that's one of the things. And then the other one is, if you qualify for a certification, you know, if you're a veteran or a women-owned, look into the programs and the eligibilities for those. And if you do qualify for those eligibilities, then you can get more information and get detailed on those to be able to get some of those set-aside contracts that are out there. So it's just a couple of steps that you have to do. But of course, you know, these little steps turn into big steps. And, you know, you just have to continue and go forward with it.
And also reach out to our resource partners and get some of that free assistance to help you move through all the different pitfalls and difficulties that you may experience as an entrepreneur as well as a new contractor to the federal government.
Perfect. And SCORE is very much there to help you on that journey.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ada. Thank you, Isis. Thanks a lot for your participation in this. This is going to be extremely useful for the listeners community, for the small businesses. Thank you once again, Ada. Thank you, Isis.
Thank you for the invitation. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Before we wrap up, a quick favor. If you find this podcast valuable, please hit subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcast or Spotify. It is free. Just takes a second and helps us continue bringing you weekly episodes designed to support your business journey. Thank you for listening to the SCORE Houston SBA series. We hope this episode helps you better understand the SBA programs and opportunities available to your business. For free mentoring and more information, visit score.org/Houston or call 713-487-6565. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and let SCORE help you succeed.